Welcome back to Super Sentai Review, episode number 421. We're here reviewing episodes 32 and 33 of the series, and this two-parter is the reason why I basically want to take a break at this point. Because I figured this two-parter would be an excellent time basically to take a break, and I proved to be correct on that, given the fact that in the very next episode starts a brand new story arc. Which, yeah, pretty smart idea on my part. So, yeah, it turns out basically that the King-Ohgers are on Earth, and they tend to find some. You have Gira and Yas arrive like in the city. Jerome, Rita, and Hiromi are in the woods. Kyoryuger, he basically is like near some garden. Which we'll get back to that. So then we see these people look like they're in a trance, and then we see the grunts from the Davos army. You're like, oh crap! You're like, Davos army back, damn. Hopefully, Kyoryuger's going to have them, and yeah, they're here because we see Soji. Now, Soji, of course. Last I saw him was actually in Kyoryuger versus Kyoryuger. This is after some cameos the teams had, but basically the first major he's involved with since this very story. At this point, it's been like 10 years. Of course, they don't mention the whole thing with Kyoryuger for some reason, but they do mention the ending of the series, but don't mention Kyoryuger for some reason. I don't know why, but that's basically what happens here. So, pretty much basically, so they introduce us to the kings, and then we have where Kyoryuger, he basically is saving an old man who turns out to be gentle. Amy's butler, who now is a gardener at this facility. Did Amy's family lose money, so he's now a gardener, or he just retired? It's not very clear. He's only appeared for this one episode. He gets his brain taken away, and presumably he's killed in the episode. Not confirmed anyway. He doesn't show up for the next episode. And you're like, okay, so you bring back a recurring character from Kyoryuger. First anybody to see this guy since the end of the damn series. And he appears here for this one episode, and presumably he's killed, and nobody brings the fact he was even here. I'm like, really? What the heck is this? Why would you bring a character like this guy? Oh, by the way, Amy is barely in this story. Like, apparently all her shots in here were digitally inserted. You want to know why? Because the actor's retired. Yes, she had retired. And you're like, really? Yeah. The actress who played Amy Yazuzuki had in fact retired. This is Eric Canito. Yes, she had retired from the showbiz. Don't know exactly the reason for it. She's not even 30. And she retired. She retired at the age of 21. So, not really sure exactly the reason for this. It's like, oh, let's bring her in for this two-parter and then pair for a movie later on, which I'll get to that. So, and meanwhile, though, there's also when, by the way, Amy, it only appears in here digitally inserted. Daigo, aka King, he appears in a flashback in episode 32. You hear a voiceover for him in episode 33, but that was it. My guess is the actor probably was not available. I'm guessing at that. Yes. So my guess is he probably did not have time to appear in the series. So let's just basically just... Now, was the actor retired? And let me look up on him. I know a couple years it looked like he tested positive for COVID. Aside from that, the man did not retire. He was featured in stuff, yes, but as far as I can tell, he did not retire. Not really, don't really know the reason why. Well, it could be, and this is my personal guess anyways, that probably the reason why that they didn't feature him very much, why he's not here. My guess is he must have had a scheduling conflict. I'm guessing that's probably the reason why that he's not here. Not even Uchi's here. You're thinking, wait, Uchi? The sixth Kyoryuger? Yeah, he only appears in flashback in 32. He doesn't do anything. He's basically him and Daigo go off to space. And presumably Amy does, but then she comes back to Earth for some reason. I don't get exactly the reason for it. So basically they claim, oh, they took all the Earth's bravery. I'm like, okay, so you have one Sentai team here, aka the Kyoryugers, and I'm like, but I love the story, but I have to ask the obvious question. Where the heck are the other Sentai teams? Where's Dawn Brothers? Where's, I don't know, Go Ranger? As far as I can tell, they all got their powers, so where are they in this story? Not even Deca Ranger's here. Like, are they in a different corner of Japan? Presumably? They just take from this one town, and presumably they claim all the bravery on Earth from this one town? Which is so baffling. So, pretty much basically like, we're introduced to Prince, where he proceeds to kill a giant version of one of the grunts, and breaks his sword. Like how Yashima, he basically fixes the sword later on. And paints his sword red. Yes, he paints it red. So, then of course, by the way, Kyoryuger, he basically runs into Naba-san. Yes. Which, I gotta say, that's actually quite interesting given the fact these two are kind of the strong men in the team, which makes sense. They fight against the original monster of the story, which is, he only appears in one episode. He does not appear in the following episode because he was destroyed by the end of this. So, he's the amalgamation of all the generals from the main series. Even though two of them actually one of them is still alive. Which to me makes absolutely no freaking sense at all. Why in the world that, like, Kananja basically got your face and she doesn't even see the damn thing in the story. We'll get to here, don't worry. So, and then we arrive at this shelter, presumably like, oh, people in this town are basically taking shelter in, which to me looks like the same shelter seen from Kyoryuger. Yes, it looked like the same exact building used from that one. By the way, it's mentioned that the Dabo's army is occupying Earth now for 2 years. Which I'm like, that's interesting. So, is this 2 years in the future? Not exactly very clear about that. They assume originally it's an alternate timeline because they go from Terra. Because someone name. So, Jerome, and by the way, Jerome, Haruto, and Rita run into Ian, who dyed his hair. Yes. I'm actually quite surprised he dyed his hair because he looks completely different. We see this mural, which Jerome points out in part 2 that his father made that damn thing because, of course, he's 2,000 years old. Apparently, the writer forgot the fact he is 2,000 years old. It's like, oh, his father made it. Like, okay. Yeah, they did mention early on that he's 2,000 years old. It's like, did the writer just forget that little factoid? Because you have the Rangers have the reaction like, really, you're 2,000 years old? Given the fact that he has told him that when he first showed up in the series. And you watch this, I'm like, the writer forgot. Yes, the writer of this one was not the same writer who wrote those other episodes. He completely forgot. So, also apparently, none of the Kyoryugers can actually morph because the bravery was taken. Okay, that kind of explains why they can't morph. They can still fight, yes. Also, during the course of fighting, it's revealed that Kanandra and Naba-san are engaged to be married. And Jerome was like, yes. He He supports this because the fact that he's a son of the original King-Ohgers, because his father was one of the original King-Ohgers, and his mother was actually one of the enemies. And he does support this. Very much so. So, they defeat the monster, and the new commander is like, oh yeah, he's commander, basically, like, commander of the Davos army, Davos of the Horn. Okay. Yeah, he's the original Davos leader for this story. He does not return after this, and there's a reason why I'll get to it. So, during the course of the thing, Prince basically is able to morph. By the way, it's really early on in the story. The only, believe it or not, Kyoryuger can morph, but the rest can't for some reason. Which I'm like, they don't exactly are clear about the reason why the other ones can't morph, but he can morph. Well, that's because apparently he's special. Also, the thing with Prince, he is from the future. Yep, he is from the future. How far in the future? I guess about 20 years in the future, given how old the guy is. Yeah, so... yeah, I love all the interaction. We have Rita. By the way, during the course of the story also, the King-Ohgers, they change out of their king outfits they've been wearing since the first episode, though. Garrett changed his to 26. Everyone else most maintain the same. So, pretty much the way that I found out all the outfits they wear in the story were all outfits the actors themselves pick out. Yes, they pick it out themselves. And I'm like, that's interesting. So, by the way, the Volsors, we only see 3 of them in this story. I'm like, where are the rest? That's a good question. We see Gabato, we see the big Tyrannosaurus, and we see Nabosun's Stegosaurus. They're in the story. But where are the other ones? Last time I checked, they had about 10, 12 of these things. And they're just not here. They assume, like, oh, they captured all the Volswords. And I'm like, no. They captured 3 of them. It's like, I'm guessing at this, that the writer, what he wrote, didn't translate with the production team with this particular line. First, they assume, and of course, thanks to research that Ian and Jerome figures out, though. So, it's revealed that there actually are, apparently, it's revealed in the story of why in the world that, of course, some people say, oh, it's maybe like an alternate timeline. No, that's not the case. It turns out the King-Ohgers are, in fact, aliens. Well, they're humans from another planet. They call it Terra. So apparently, from when they first arrived, the settlers, the people who founded the kingdoms, were actually originally from Earth, and the palace, Gira's palace, was originally not only just a giant robot, but it was also a spaceship. You're like, what? A spaceship? Well, that does come into play. I'm like, that is interesting. Given the fact that they mentioned before, like, oh, it was a spaceship. Okay. And is able to transport all their Zords to Earth, no problem. I'm like, that's interesting. So, by the way, the royal family has been living in this spaceship all this time, and no one has brought the fact it was a spaceship prior to this. You're like, okay, it's a cool revelation the fact it was a spaceship, but there was no hint it was a spaceship. But it being a giant robot, that was a really cool revelation, because basically you can see it, given the fact that it's got a metal floor, and the fact it looks different from a lot of the other buildings in this place. So, the giant robot thing, basically, I still feel as though that was a cool reveal, but it being a spaceship, basically, where it's just feels out of nowhere. It feels like a A very unnecessary retcon just to explain how they get back to their home planet. So apparently also when Hammer plays music, apparently they've lost the ability to listen to music in 2 years, which, okay. If that's the case, how the heck they entertain themselves for 2 years is a big question mark right there. So, it had of course, it continued various fighting. Also, we know the fact that, by the way, also, I should point out though, we do see Nablus' sister return and his niece. Except his niece looks completely different when she was last seen. Yes, for some reason, they decided to replace Rika's actress. They recasted her for some reason. Like, I love her character in Kyoryuger. She was a great character. She didn't appear too much. She wasn't like to the point of like bad child actors per se, but she was a great character. And yet they bring her back here, which great they did. And I'm like, wait, you look different. That's because they changed her actress. I don't know exactly by the way, the sister, in case you're curious though, is it the same actress from Kyoryuger? Oh heck yes, definitely. Which like, yes. Yeah. And in case you're curious though, is it still Deca Yellow? Oh yes. Yes indeed. She is back. Which, by the way, we don't have a little awkward tension between the actor who played Ohsama and her in the story. Which, that would have been interesting. Given the fact that in the crossover story, these two met. And the fact that, well, the actress is 16 years old and he is. Which, I'm surprised that it's like, is it just me or is like the series trying to ignore that crossover special? But it could be just because the special was released after the series wrapped up. I only watched because I was curious about it. And plus it was more like a prologue into the 20th anniversary of Kyoryuger, which I like kind of the story for it, but I felt like basically it didn't warrant a 20th anniversary thing. I feel like basically this was probably this probably was a script probably was going to be for the series, because it felt like basically a standard like a standard 2-part for Kyoryuger, but didn't the same oof like the original one that like the 10th anniversary movie did. But so more fighting, and by the way, also the fact that the King of the Universe basically is one who brought him to Earth. I'm like, that's interesting. So you bring about an old Sentai villain faction to conquer Earth for reasons. By the way, not the first time in Sentai we had Earth being conquered by villains. This also happened in, I kid you not, Ohranger, where the planet was briefly under alien occupation for 6 months. And next time this happened again wasn't until Kyoryuger. Though that was an alternate timeline, of course. But in the case of this one, yeah, I'm not sure exactly how they replace this thing. It's like, I'm guessing it's in the future, given the fact there's no mention of Dawn Brothers. Yeah, no mention of Dawn Brothers. It's been 2 years since they occupied the planet. So either that it's set in 2024, or it's not 20, either set in 2023, or it's set in 2025. I'm guessing, but there's no confirmation about that. They never said what the date was. All they said was they arrived 2 years prior to the story. They do mention it's been 10 years since they defeated the original Davos army. Of course, they showed a lot of flashbacks from the original Kyoryuger series, which I do appreciate the fact they did that. So, then we have another mech battle, obviously, but only 3 Devil swords for some reason. And also the fact the cockpit looks different. And there's a reason for that. Why the main Kyoryuger mech, why the cockpit looks different from the original series. Apparently, according to what I've read, the reason it looks different because apparently the original cockpit was not available. So they basically just made a new one, and made the platforms bigger. But still, it's the same function. Of course, it's a really cool sequence where they have the two mechs fight alongside to defeat this one bad guy. And then the end of it is basically where they say all the goodbyes. Also, there's a really cool scene here. We have Rita with Lakiro, who's like Muffin. Of course, she thinks of me and Muffin. Of course, she's never heard of it. but by the way, the second time she's worn this, she wears a mask in this series because she likes wearing a mask for reasons, and like a little hugging, of course, protecting her. And we would have Ian doing this whole hitting on Himuro, where it's like, ooh, you're. I can't believe it's like this lady belongs to himself, and calls her a beauty, which she doesn't respond to him. I'm sure she probably smiles at the fact that he called her a beauty because she's beautiful. No denying that the actress is very beautiful, the one that plays her. And I love all of the team-ups they have here. They have with the fights, of course. You have Gear work with Prince. That's obvious. You have Amy, Rita, and Himuro work together as a team during the final fight sequence. We have also, of course, Namba and Kaguya, where basically these two team with each other, which I found that to be quite obvious. And also Jerome working with Sanji. I'm like, that's a really interesting combination. Which, by the way, prior to this particular, when they had the final fight sequence, these two never much. I don't think these two ever shared screen time together. It's like Jerome basically interacts with Ian. He interacts a little with Sanji. And I'm like, he doesn't like really anybody else in the story. I do like his performance. Yes, the actor plays an excellent job in this story. Yeah, the fact that, well, the whole thing is found basically making a mural, which apparently the other half is actually in the Royal Palace, which they brought with them. Yes. But this two-parter was amazing. Like, aside from the obvious questions I have about it, like, where are their Sentai teams? What year is this placed in? Oh, and here's something else also about this. Naba's sister, when she appears in the story, she doesn't morph. Either she lost her morpher, or she forgot it. I'm like, really? They do remember she's a sister, but they should have remembered, oh yeah, she actually is a Kyoryuger. She's Kyle's scion. She's Ramirez's successor. Sadly put, his actor just recently passed away. Rest in peace, man. You like, I love his character, Ramirez. He was amazing. He didn't appear very much, but basically he did a fantastic job with the character. It's like he basically just he just was having a lot of fun playing that character. But in the case of, by the way, also one other thing, where are the rest of the Kyoryugers? Like, we have the main six, but what about the rest of them? That's the honest to God really question. Of course, yes, we do hear the equipment voice, which of course is also Kuro Violet's grandfather, the second one. He's one that's the voice for it, which I'm glad the fact they brought him back for the story, which makes total sense. Either that or they basically reuse his voice in the main series. I'm thinking they probably have new lines. Plus, they reveal at the end of the story that Prince is, in fact, Amy and Daigo's son. And they look at her, and she's like, huh? It's like she has no reaction because she wasn't freaking there. It's like, basically, watch the scene like, wait, this guy, and of course, basically, look at her like, oh, lucky. Yeah. Of course, they figure, obviously, it's Daigo's son, and assuming it's Amy is the mother, given the fact that she's very special to him, and the fact when you see her in the story, he almost calls her mom because that is his mother. Yep, but this, like I said, good episodes. It's just that you have these question marks basically, like what year is it placed in, where are they Sentai, why did basically you bring in Nelson's sister, but you forget her morpher? Why was Rika's actress changed? Where are the other Spirit Rangers? That's a really question. Where the heck were they? Because last time I checked, they didn't die at the end of Kyoryuger. They did briefly appear in Kyoryuger versus Kyoryuger, but they don't appear here. What else? Where are the other Volsaurs? Good question. What else? I can't think of anything much else, basically, that was a question mark I have. As for Naosun getting engaged to Kendrida, I was quite happy to see that, given the fact these two were... It was very heavily hinted the fact these two have thing for each other in Kyoryuger. The fact that she basically kind of fell in love with him. Probably because she loved his old man jokes. One of the few people who did, including his own brother-in-law. Yes. Overall, there's a good enough of people who actually do love his jokes. His old man jokes. Like, he's an absolute great character. Yeah, so... So the only people who actually laughed at his jokes were Sela, who is actually one of the Kyoryuger, who actually were the Zoo Rangers, which I'm getting Zoo Ranger in the future. Don't worry about that. Reiji from Go Busters, yeah, he loved his jokes, probably because basically they think he's old man himself. Kendrida, Kanedra, who actually became engaged to him. Dr. Bullshit, yeah, he actually loved the jokes too. And of course his brother-in-law. Yeah. But all in all, it's a good story. I love it. But like I said, basically with all the question marks we have at the end of the story, but anything really else basically I forgot here? No, not really. I do appreciate all the nods to Kyoryuger the story. Now, in case you're curious, though, the guy who they do have where it says supervised by Minto Taniko, like, so he was the head writer of Kyoryuger. This one's written by Corey Kinko. Did this person write Kyoryuger? No. The guy who directed this, he actually did, like, prior to this one, he did do some episodes of Kara Major, but, okay, so at least they brought back a guy who actually directed Kyoryuger, which kind of appreciate the fact that it felt like, well, you can definitely say it felt like an episode of Kyoryuger because they brought back their actor, director, which gotta appreciate the fact, basically, they did that for part 2. Part 1, yeah, he did do part 1 of the story. Yeah. But all in all, like I said, great overall story. I loved it. I just kind of wish they would have basically expanded it. So I know it's the director's cut of the story, yes, but I haven't seen it. Maybe they may actually have some question marks answered there. Because apparently there is an hour-long director's cut edition of the story. I wonder if the directors actually added the stuff in there. Trying to see basically like the anything here. So I don't really know. Exactly if like there's any changes, but I'm gonna end it here because I really want to get to watching. Let's see. Okay, so okay, it's not on here. So I will see you all later for my review for Blue Exorcist because I know the comic already, but it's not yet. So I'll see you all later.